Welcome in, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we are going to be focusing on something that's super important, especially if you're a new entrepreneur.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you're
Yeah.
probably just like drowning in data, right?
Right.
You've got website traffic, you've got customer feedback, you've got all these numbers coming at you, and you're like, what do I do with this?
Yeah. Everyone wants to collect data.
Yeah.
And nobody actually knows
Right,
what to do with it.
exactly. So our deep dive today is going to help you, as an entrepreneur, uh, figure out how to make that data work for you. And we're going to be looking at this really cool book all about designing tables and graphs. And it's a really cool approach because it's all about making those numbers tell a story.
Yeah, it's about making it make sense
All right.
instead of just having rows and rows of numbers.
Yeah, especially if you're thinking about pitching your business to investors or something.
Oh, for sure.
You don't want to just hand them a spreadsheet.
No one wants to read that.
You want to give them something.
Especially investors.
Right.
That's going to draw them in and make them understand what your business is all about.
And this book really hits on that. It's one of the things it says is that most people feel overwhelmed by data.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Which is exactly what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And it's so true. I mean, it even emphasizes, the book even emphasizes, how tables and graphs, they can help you in very specific ways. They can help you analyze the data, communicate the data, monitor what's going on, and plan for the future.
Oh, it's interesting.
And those are all things that an entrepreneur needs to do.
And actually, one of the things I thought was really interesting in this book was how they break down the different types of relationships you can find in data.
Oh, yeah.
It's like learning a whole new language.
It is.
But they've got nominal, ordinal, interval, hierarchical. It's like, what?
Right. It's to make this a little bit more concrete,
Yeah.
imagine you're running an online store
Oh.
that sells handmade soaps.
Okay, I like it.
Right. So
Yeah.
nominal categories. Those are your different soap scents, like lavender,
Yeah.
peppermint, citrus.
Yeah.
They're all distinct,
Yeah.
but there's no ranking between them.
Exactly. They're just different categories.
Right.
Now, if you think about ordinal data, that's where you have an order. Maybe you offer small, medium, and large sizes of your soap.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a progression.
Yeah.
It goes from small to medium to large.
Got it.
But the difference between each size might not be the same.
Oh, that's interesting.
A medium soap might be 4 ounces, and a large one might be 6 ounces.
Right.
So there's an order, but the intervals aren't necessarily equal.
That makes sense.
Oh,
Then you've got interval, which I think would be the temperature that you melt your soap base at. So say 120 degrees, 130 degrees. Each degree represents the same amount of heat difference. Does that make sense?
yes, that's a perfect example.
Okay. And then finally, you've got hierarchical categories. And I was thinking this would be your website navigation, where you might have a main category for soaps, and then subcategories like floral, herbal, citrus, with the individual soap scents listed under those.
Yeah, like a tree structure.
Yeah.
With branches.
Exactly.
And that structure is super important because it helps you determine how to actually show that information visually.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Whether you're doing it for yourself or you're making a presentation for investors.
Yeah, because I was just thinking about that. When I see, a really well-designed graph, it's
Yeah.
my eye is immediately drawn to the key points. I don't even have to think about it.
And that's because of visual perception. And the book talks about this too.
Yeah.
They call them pre-attentive attributes.
That's a good phrase.
It's basically our brains are wired to notice things like color, size, and position before we even consciously process them.
That's so cool. So even before I'm thinking about what I'm looking at, my brain is already picking up on those cues.
Exactly. And so you can use this to your advantage when you're designing graphs. Well, let's say you're showing your investors a chart of your monthly sales.
Okay.
If there's a particular month where sales just went through the roof,
Yeah.
you could use a bolder color for that bar on the graph.
Yeah.
Or make the font size bigger, and that's going to immediately draw their attention to that achievement.
It's you're highlighting the good stuff.
Exactly. You're guiding their focus
Cool.
without them even realizing it.
So you're basically telling a story with the data, even before they start reading the numbers.
Exactly.
That's so smart.
And it goes back to this idea of maximizing what the book calls data ink.
Data ink.
Yeah.
What is that?
Basically, it means every single drop of ink on your chart should be there for a reason.
Oh, so you don't want to have...
You want to cut out all the clutter, all the unnecessary stuff.
Got it.
Yeah, anything that distracts from the message.
Like decluttering your data.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now I want to talk about this really cool chart that I had never even heard of before reading this book. It's called the table lens.
Oh, yeah?
And
Table lenses are great.
I can already see how this would be so useful for like a new entrepreneur.
Because you can see correlations that you might not normally pick up on. If you're just looking at like a big table of numbers.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, so imagine you're trying to figure out which of your social media posts are driving the most traffic to your website.
Right?
A table lens can show you that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
It can lay it all out visually.
It's like you can have your different social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, whatever, on one axis.
Yeah.
And then website traffic on the other.
Yeah.
And then each like little lens would represent a different post.
Right,
and
yeah.
you could like instantly see which ones are bringing in the most visitors.
Yes. And the best part is it's visual. So you can actually see the patterns.
So much easier than just like staring at a spreadsheet.
Oh, yeah. Way easier.
Okay. This is all starting to make sense. I'm starting to feel like it. I could actually use this stuff.
You totally can.
But I have to admit, I did have kind of a freak out moment when I got to the section on common graph design mistakes. Because they showed this example where a company made a tiny sales increase look huge.
Oh, yeah.
Just by like tweaking the scale of the graph.
You can manipulate it so easily.
Right. And I was like, wait a minute. Are they trying to trick people?
It happens all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And it's not always intentional either.
Well,
Sometimes people just don't know.
Huh.
But as an entrepreneur, you got to be really careful about that because
Yeah.
you're building your business on trust, and that includes being honest with your data.
Absolutely.
So it's important to know how to spot those tricks
Yeah.
and make sure you're presenting your data in a way that's transparent.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we've talked about like different types of data, different types of graphs, how to design graphs in a way that's like visually appealing
Yeah.
and draws people's attention to the right stuff. But
Yeah,
at the end of the day, what's the point?
It's all about telling a story.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Okay, so even if you have like the most accurate data and it's visualized beautifully,
Yeah.
it's the story that really matters.
Okay. So it's not just about like presenting the numbers. It's about like
Yeah.
weaving them into a narrative
Yeah,
that people can connect with.
exactly. And that's where understanding your audience comes in.
Right. Because like if I'm talking to investors
Exactly.
versus like my customers.
You're going to tell a different story.
Right.
So let's say you're talking to potential investors about your soap business.
Okay.
Instead of just like throwing a bunch of sales figures at them,
Right.
tell them the story.
Yeah.
Of how your soaps are solving a problem for your customers.
Okay. I like
Right. Like maybe your soaps are made with all natural ingredients that are super gentle on sensitive skin.
Okay.
So you can talk about how there's a growing demand for natural products.
Yeah.
And then show them how your sales reflect that trend.
It's like brews and so it's like you're taking those dry ingredients,
Yeah.
the numbers,
Yeah.
and like baking them into a delicious cake.
I love it.
All right.
That's a great analogy.
It's like-
because suddenly it's something that people can actually
Yeah.
connect with.
It's not just like numbers on a page.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've talked about storytelling,
Yeah.
but there are so many different types of graphs. Like, how do we even know which one to use?
That's where the book comes in handy
Good.
because it goes into detail
Yeah.
about all sorts of different graphs.
Like what?
Line graphs,
Okay.
bar graphs,
Mhm.
scatter plots,
Oh, yeah.
pie charts,
Right.
even those like funky radar charts.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. And it can feel overwhelming,
Right.
but each type has its own strengths and weaknesses.
Okay. So how do we choose?
You have to think about the message you want to convey.
Right.
So for example, line graphs are really good for showing trends over time.
Okay.
Like if you're tracking your website traffic month over month, a line graph can show you whether it's increasing, decreasing, or staying the same.
Got it. What about bar graphs?
Bar graphs are great for comparing different categories.
Okay.
So like if you want to see which of your soap scents are your top sellers,
Right.
you could use a bar graph.
And then like each scent would be a bar.
Exactly.
You could see like how tall each bar is.
Exactly. And then if you want to see the relationship between two different sets of data,
Okay.
you could use a scatter plot.
Scatter plot.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
what would be an example of that?
So like let's say you want to see if there's a connection between the number of Instagram followers you have
Okay.
and the number of website visitors.
Okay, yeah.
A scatter plot can show you if those two variables are moving in the same direction,
Oh, that's interesting.
or if there's no correlation at all.
So like if one goes up, does the other one go up?
Exactly.
Okay. What about those radar charts?
Radar charts.
Those are the ones that look like spider webs, right?
Yes.
Those always confuse me.
They can be a bit much,
Yeah.
but they're actually really useful for comparing the performance of multiple things across different metrics.
Okay. Give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you want to compare your soap business to a couple of your competitors.
Okay.
You could create a radar chart where each spoke of the web represents a different metric,
Like what?
like product quality,
Okay.
customer satisfaction, brand awareness, price.
Right.
And then you plot each business on the chart,
Oh, interesting.
and you can instantly see their strengths and weaknesses.
So it's like a visual snapshot
Yeah.
of like how you stack up
That's exactly
against the competition.
Exactly.
Okay. So it sounds like choosing the right graph is really about finding the one that tells a story you want to tell.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about finding the visual language. That resonates with your audience.
I like that.
Yeah. But beyond the visuals, there's another layer we need to consider.
What's that?
The different types of data
Oh, right.
that you'll be working with as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, because it's not all just numbers.
Exactly.
Right.
So the book breaks it down into two main categories: quantitative data and categorical data.
Okay, what's quantitative data?
Quantitative data is all about numbers.
Okay.
Your sales figures, your website traffic, the number of customer reviews you get, basically any data that you can measure and crunch.
It's the stuff that makes spreadsheets happy.
Exactly.
Okay. What about categorical data?
Categorical data is about grouping things into different categories. So think about like your customer demographics,
Okay.
their age range, gender, location,
Got it.
or your product categories, like those floral soaps, herbal soaps, and citrus soaps we talked about earlier.
Right. So quantitative is numbers
Okay.
and categorical is like categories.
Exactly.
Okay. But why is this distinction important?
Because it affects how you analyze and present your data.
Okay.
So for example, if you're working with quantitative data,
Uh-huh.
you can use statistical analysis to uncover trends and patterns.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like you could calculate the average order value for your soap business
Okay.
or track your sales growth over time.
So it's like you're using data
Yeah,
to answer questions about your business.
exactly. And if you're working with categorical data, you might use things like frequency tables or pie charts to visualize the distribution of different categories.
Okay, so like if I wanted to see what percentage of my customers fall into different age groups,
Exactly.
I could use a pie chart to show that.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So it sounds like we need to choose the right tool for the job.
Yes.
Different types of data
Mm-hmm.
require different approaches.
Right. Yeah.
But there's one part of this whole data world that still kind of freaks me out.
What's that?
All those like statistical concepts,
Yeah.
like standard deviation,
Mm,
correlation, and oh my God, regression analysis.
I know.
Just hearing those words
They sound scary.
makes me want to run away.
I know. But the book actually does a really good job
Yeah.
of breaking them down into like plain English.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Mm.
So let's start with standard deviation.
Okay.
Remember our example of customer satisfaction scores?
Yeah, like on a scale of 1 to 5.
Exactly.
Right.
So you've got all these scores from your customers, and the average score gives you like a general idea of how satisfied people are.
Right.
But standard deviation tells you how spread out those scores are.
Okay. So like if the standard deviation is high, it means that like some people really love my soap.
Yeah.
Some people really hate it.
Exactly.
There's a wide range of opinions.
Yes.
But if the standard deviation is low, it means that most people are kind of like,
Yeah, they're all clustered around the average.
they're like, yeah, it's fine.
Right.
Okay. That makes sense. What about correlation?
Correlation.
I hear that word all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm not really sure what it means.
So correlation tells you if there's a relationship between two different variables. So remember our example of Instagram followers and website visitors.
Right.
If there's a positive correlation, it means that as your Instagram followers increase, your website visitors also tend to increase.
Oh, that's good.
They're moving in the same direction.
So if I see like a spike in my Instagram followers,
Yeah.
I might also see a spike in my website traffic.
Exactly.
Correct.
And then if there's a negative correlation, it means they're moving in opposite directions.
So maybe as the price of my soap goes up, the quantity I sell goes down.
Yeah, people might be less willing to buy it if it gets too expensive.
Right, like there's a balance
Yeah,
between price and demand.
exactly.
Okay. So correlation helps us understand those relationships.
Yes.
But what about regression analysis?
So regression analysis takes correlation a step further.
Okay.
It allows you to use those relationships to make predictions.
Oh, that sounds useful.
Yeah. So let's say you've noticed that there's a strong positive correlation between your marketing spend and your sales revenue. You could use regression analysis to create a model that predicts how much revenue you might generate based on different levels of marketing spend.
Oh, so instead of just like guessing
Yeah.
how much I should invest in marketing, I could use data to actually like
Make a more informed decision.
figure it out.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
So it gives you a data-driven
Yeah.
way to estimate the impact of your marketing efforts.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
But with all this talk about data analysis and visualization, I'm wondering, is there a risk of like getting too caught up in the numbers and like losing sight of the bigger picture,
Oh, that's a great point.
you know?
Yeah, it's important to remember that data is a tool.
Right.
It's not the goal in itself. It's
Yeah.
about using data to inform your decisions, gain insights, and achieve your business goals.
It's about using data to like
Oh.
help you steer the ship, not to like drown you in a sea of numbers.
Exactly.
Okay. But here's another question. How do you stay motivated to keep learning about all this stuff?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to feel overwhelmed
Oh,
and just give up.
I completely understand. It can
Right.
be a lot. But the beauty is data can be really fun
Really?
if you approach it with the right mindset.
Okay.
Yeah. Think of it like solving puzzles,
Oh.
uncovering hidden patterns,
Yeah.
and telling stories with numbers.
It's like being a data detective,
Exact.
searching for clues to crack the case.
Yes.
I like that.
And when you experience those aha moments, when you uncover those insights, that can help you make better decisions. It's so rewarding.
Yeah. It's like those data points suddenly like click into place.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh,
Right.
I see it now.
And the more comfortable you get, the more you'll start seeing those insights everywhere.
Oh, interesting.
It's about developing a data-driven mindset,
Okay.
a way of thinking. That helps you see the world through a new lens.
So it's not just about learning the technical skills. It's about cultivating a new way of thinking.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's a journey that's worth taking, especially for entrepreneurs who want to make a real impact.
That's a good point. So it's not just about learning the technical skills. It's about cultivating a new way of thinking.
Absolutely. And that's a journey that's worth taking, especially for entrepreneurs who want to make a real impact.
I feel like I've learned so much already. It's amazing how data can go from this big, scary monster to a powerful tool in your arsenal.
It really is. And the more you use it, the more intuitive it becomes.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, is there one key piece of advice you'd give to our new entrepreneur listening? What's the one thing they should take away from all of this?
Don't be afraid to get your hands and dirty dive into your data, experiment with different ways of visualizing it. And most importantly, don't be afraid to ask questions.
That's such a great point. There are so many resources available to help entrepreneurs learn about data, from online courses to books like the one we've been discussing today.
And don't underestimate the power of community. Connect with other entrepreneurs, share your experiences, and learn from each other's successes and challenges.
It's like building a support system for your data journey.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, data is about people. It's about understanding your customers, your market, and ultimately it's about using that understanding to build a successful business.
Well said. A huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise with us today. It's been an incredible journey through the world of data.
It's been my pleasure. And to all you entrepreneurs out there, remember that data is your friend. Embrace it, learn from it, and use it to tell your story.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and keep making those numbers work for you.
That's a good point. It really is a journey.
It is.
So much to learn. But I think we've covered like a lot of the basics today.
Yeah, we've hit on some key stuff for sure.
And I hope our listeners out there, especially those new entrepreneurs, are feeling a little bit more confident about tackling their data.
That's the goal.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, is there one final piece of advice you would give to our new entrepreneur listening in? Like, what's the one thing they should take away from all of this?
You know, I would say don't be afraid to just dive in, get your hands dirty.
Play around with the data. Experiment
Yeah.
with different ways of visualizing it. And most importantly, ask questions.
Ask questions.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Like if you don't understand something, don't be afraid to ask.
Right. And there's so many resources available these days.
Oh, yeah.
Like you can find online courses. You can read books like the one we've been talking about today.
For sure.
So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out and get help.
Yeah. And honestly, don't underestimate the power of community.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, like connect with other entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Share your experiences.
Like a mastermind group.
Yeah, like a mastermind group.
You can all learn from each other.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because, at the end of the day, data is about people.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's about understanding your customers, understanding your market, and using that understanding to build a successful business.
Well said. Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap things up here. A huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise with us today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
It's been a really fun deep dive.
It has.
We've learned so much about how to make data work for us instead of against us. And to all of you entrepreneurs out there listening, remember, data is your friend. Embrace it, learn from it, and use it to tell your story.
Tell your story.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.